All right. So this morning, it actually took me a lot this week to figure out exactly what direction to go here, because we were at the end of the part of the Bible where we had the story that has been going on for a while with Jacob. So we're making a transition this morning from Jacob to one of his sons, actually. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. You ever heard of Joseph? Yeah, Joseph, he's got a lot going on. So we're going to actually get into Joseph. Is the new place where we're getting ready to go with all this. Because we're going to get into Joseph's life, and there is a lot of stuff going on here. But we're going to start where pretty clean. So this morning's sermon, and I think a lot of us can relate to this. It's called From Dreams to Nightmares. You ever had that where you had like the dream of a new job, a new relationship, you know what I mean, new school, or whatever it is, and you get into it, and then it just all goes down south, right? And that's really what happens to poor Joseph here, And the original title I had for this was when the dream goes to the pit. I didn't really want to put hell in the title of it, so I changed it to Nightmares. So it's going to be out of chapter 37, and the theme this morning is God's purposes are still working when circumstances seem to contradict his promises. And here's the central truth. The pit does not cancel the promises. And I think that's one thing that we always forget. We saw the dream, we wanted the dream, we were on a trajectory, and then someone would get thrown into a pit. And it's like, God, what are you doing to me? And it's tough. But God's promises, it doesn't cancel just because you got thrown into a bad spot. Sometimes the pit is part of the path God uses to fulfill it. And a lot of people, they don't understand that. God will allow you to go through temptations and trials in your life to test you in order to build up your strength so that you're able to do what he wants you to do and what he has made you to do. And I think that's one of those things that's hard for people to understand. Why does God allow bad things to happen to good people? Anybody ever asked that question? Why does God allow bad things to happen to good people? Because for some of us, it definitely doesn't make sense. It's like, I'm doing everything I can in my life to do exactly what God has told me, and it seems like my life is a shipwreck. And then I look over here at this person, and they are definitely living life in a sinful manner. And it seems like everything is dialed in no matter what. And they are always on the top of the mountain. And I'm always on the bottom looking up. And then I get frustrated after dealing with that year after year after year. And it's like, maybe I should just give up. Maybe I should just give up and be like everybody else. And maybe my life will turn around. Because I'm obviously taking my boat way against the current. And I am paddling and paddling and paddling. And I'm getting nowhere. But think about this. If you only had that, and I've had this happen to people, where she was living her life, everything was wonderful, huge house, wonderful husband, beautiful kids, everybody's varsity, you know what I mean? Money's no problem, and she looks at me and says, I've never had any challenges in my life. And I'm like, oh honey. And then I actually got this. Right? Yeah, and God will actually, and think about like training. If you never use your muscles, if you don't have muscle reflex memory, if you don't get the training that you need to be able to be what God wants you to be, he has to prepare you. You think about Moses. What did Moses go through in the desert to be able to train a nation? What did Paul have to go through to be able to bring the gospel? You know what I mean? What did David have to go through with Saul? I could go on and on and on and on and on, where all of these people, ultimately God used for a massive task. But before they ever got there, they had a whole lot of hardship to be able to build their character and what God wanted them to be. So, but there's two things that happen here sometimes. Bad things happen to good people. One, God is building you up for something. Another, sometimes it doesn't make sense. And that's just somebody using their free will, and it hurts you. Okay? And we live in a broken and a fallen world. And that's hard to understand sometimes. So when we go through this passage, Joseph is 17 years old when we start this passage. And God gives him a glimpse into the future through two visions you're going to see here. Okay? And those don't go very well with either his brothers or his family. Okay? And what it shows us, another thing that we need to talk about is favoritism. Favoritism within the family is always a bad thing. You got to treat all of your children equally, but Jacob, he didn't do that, did he? He waited for that last son, and then he put him on a pedestal high above everybody else, and he became basically the snitch, is the best way to put it. Does anybody like a snitch? No. Nobody likes a snitch. And then to make it even worse, he gave him gift after gift after gift, the coat of many colors, gave him everything a kid could happen. And this is really common when we have kids that are the last kid. Parents have more money, less patience, so what do? They just give them whatever they want. Everybody's guilty of that. You tell me a family that isn't, I'll give them an award myself. All right. So that's kind of testing here what's going on here. And here's a deeper question is, can we trust God when our circumstances look nothing like what he promised? Here he's going to give Joseph a vision into the future. And then he ends up in a really, really, really bad place. And when you're at the bottom of a pit and you're broken and you don't have anything left and you're looking up out of the bottom of that pit, literally, in Joseph's case, how can you see God's providence in your life? It's a very, very hard place to be. So, I'm going to give you a modern illustration of the story, because some of us, they are visual people. Okay? And this is actually a lot of fun, what I was doing. Rewrite the story a little bit and put it in a different context. Can you guys see that okay? Mm-hmm. All right, so, I'll try to read through this real quick. It's called The Office at the End of the Hall. Danielle Carter, fictional person, okay, had worked at a company for almost 7 years. She wasn't the loudest person in the office, but she was dependable. When projects were in trouble, Danielle stayed late. When someone made a mistake, she helped to fix it. When co-workers struggled, she covered for them. Eventually, the company president noticed after 7 years. One afternoon, he called Danielle into his office, and he says, "We're planning for the future," he told her, "and I can see you leading the department someday." Danielle was stunned. Stunned. She told only 3 people who she considered to be her friends. They had eaten lunch together hundreds of times. They knew each other's families. They exchanged birthday gifts. They complained about the bad days together. Danielle thought that she could trust them. She was wrong. Within days, the conversations started behind her back. Danielle thinks she's going to be our boss someday. Right? You can see where this is going. You should hear her when she talks now about management when they're not around. She takes credit for everybody else's work. Right? Most of the time, it wasn't true. But the most damaging lies contained just enough truth to sound believable. Then, someone created a private group chat. Screenshots circulated. Every mistake Danielle made was photographed and shared. Isn't that horrible? But this really happens in life, right? Every email she sent was picked apart. When she walked into the break room, conversations stopped immediately. But when Danielle asked what was wrong, everyone smiled. Everyone smiled. Nothing, we're good. It kind of sounds like high school, doesn't it? Right? Then came the betrayal that hurt the most. One of Danielle's closest friends began meeting privately with their manager. She carefully planted doubts. I'm worried about Danielle. I don't want to gossip, but I think you should know. Right? You see where this setup is going? The words that followed were half-truths, were exaggerated stories. Private conversations Danielle had shared in confidence. The same woman would later walk into Danielle's office, shut the door, and say, I don't know why everyone is treating you this way. I'm here for you. She would comfort Danielle in the morning and then help to destroy her reputation in the afternoon. Soon, the promotion disappeared. Then Danielle was removed from important meetings. People stopped asking for her opinion. Finally, when major projects developed, the group saw their opportunity. Emails were selectively forwarded. Information was withheld. Mistakes were made by others and quietly placed in Danielle's lap. When management started asking questions, several co-workers' versions of the story were the same. Danielle was the problem. On Friday afternoon, she was fired. This stuff happens all the time. This stuff, it's a fictional story, but it's very relatable. So what is she doing? She's taking the box with the walk of shame out of the office. She walked through the office carrying the cardboard box, while she had once considered friends stared at their computer screens. Nobody looked at her. Nobody said goodbye. After 7 years, can you imagine that? Losing the job hurt. When she got to her car, she closed the door and finally broke down. But discovering what people she loved and what people she loved had done behind her back, that hurt much more. She kept asking herself, how could people who knew me believe these things? And even worse, how could people who knew them truly say that? For months, she struggled with bitterness. Then, an unexpected phone call out of the clear blue, a cold call. A contractor who had worked with Danielle on several projects heard what happened. I don't believe what they're saying about you, he told her. I've watched you work. His company needed help. Danielle accepted the position. Initially looked like a step backwards, but something happened there. She flourished. She rebuilt her systems. She developed people. She earned trust. The company grew and Danielle grew with it. 5 years later, she walked into the executive office carrying a new box. A box with her stuff in it. This time she wasn't carrying her belongings out. She was carrying them in. She placed the new box on the new desk and looked through the window. Probably a corner office. Lots of glass. For that moment, she remembered that Friday afternoon. The whispers, the group chat, the lies. The friends who hugged her were betraying her. The co-workers who helped push her out. Danielle finally understood something. They thought they were destroying her future. They were actually pushing her towards it. And the reason I think that this story is so relevant even to my life, I had to serve at 2 really, really bad churches. And I don't say that lightly. I'm talking like they're man-eating, pastor-eating churches. And I thought for the longest time, God, why would you have me at 14 years at one church that did this, and then 8 years at another? And the reality is, I've been through so much stuff. Now when we're doing this our way, the right way, it's so much better. It's so much better. But trust me, when I was in the middle of all that, I kept asking the question, why? Why, Lord? Why? So as we go on, let's transition to the story here. I think this is a great picture. Yeah. Right? All those angry brothers, another word comes to mind when I think about it. So let's go ahead and let's look at this introduction. Why life doesn't look like a dream. He's only 17 years old. He receives these dreams, and you know what? He thinks he's on the good path. So let's read verses 1 through 4 real quick. This is what it says. It says, Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, in the land of Canaan. You see where the transition is here now. It's no longer about his dad. It's about him. These are the family records of Jacob. At 17 years of age, Joseph tended with his brothers. No, they were all shepherds. Okay. Tended with his brothers. Let me catch my place again. Sorry. At 17 years of age, Joseph tended sheep with his brothers. The young man was working with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. Remember those? Those are the maidservants. And the father's wives. And he brought a bad report of them to his father. He was the snitch. Does anybody like a snitch? My kids have told me this line, snitches get stitches. Right? What? No, I didn't say you. I said my kids. You're one of my kids. Verse 3. Now Israel, it was actually your older brothers that said that, by the way. Now Israel loved Joseph more than his other sons because Joseph was the son born to him in his old age. And he made his long sleeve robe for him. You see, this is where it kind of sets in. Not a good thing when we start looking here. We have favoritism, we have a problem. And Jacob should have known better. A lot of this I'm going to throw back on the dad because remember, all that family drama before, he's allowing it to come again in these cycles. And you can see how Satan just keeps spinning these families. And a lot of people think, my family's perfect. I'm going to tell you right now, no family's perfect. God actually specializes in messed up families because that is the norm. You think you got a perfect family? No. Every family's screwed up. That's the reality here, okay? So, this just rolls right into the next generation. We often repeat the same conflicts over and over and over again. That's why it's so important to know your past. Because if you don't know your past, you are bound to repeat it again in the future. And look at what happens here. We have favoritism. We have anger, manipulation, bitterness, emotional distance, and unforgiveness. All of these things have taken seed in the next generation here, once again. And a lot of it just started once again because of the favoritism. And let me tell you, these 11 brothers, they're rough. I skipped a story. You want to read it on your own time with what happened to their sister? These brothers, they have no problem killing people. They go to the sword before they think. Okay? They're rough brothers. So this puts Joseph in a pretty bad spot. Because his brothers, they're going to do things that are probably very unsavory. Going on to verse 5. Then Joseph had a dream. When he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, listen to this dream that I had. There we were, binding sheaves of grain in the field. Suddenly, my sheaf stood up, and your sheaves began to gather around it and bowed down to my sheaf. You know how that went over, right?
Yeah.
Are you really going to reign over us? His brothers asked him. Are you really going to rule over us? So they hated him even more because of his dream and what he had said. And I can see the immaturity here. This kid's only 17. And sometimes there's not a filtering. You don't think things through. You just let it come on right out. That might have been one of those visions you kind of keep for the future. He didn't do it. So, that is what happened. You can see. Yeah, I don't think his brothers liked that vision very much, did they? Not at all. And here's the thing is, this dream, it shows him being elevated, and it shows all of the rest of them submitting to his authority. And once again, this is counterintuitive. The youngest being the one who is going to save the family. Nobody thinks that way. Okay? All right, verse 9, going on here. Then he had another dream and told his brothers, look, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. You see, this just gets better and better. Doesn't it? He told his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him. What kind of dream is this that you have had? He said to him. Am I and your mother and your brothers really going to come and bow down to you on the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him. And his father kept the matter in mind. The father should have interceded of what was going to happen there. But when you're looking at that, that's a bad vision if you're the youngest child here. Now the entire family is submitting to your authority. That jealousy, the hatred, the manipulation, I mean, this kid's getting set up for success right now. This is going to be very, very bad for him as we go through this. And you can see, the sun represents the father, the moon represents the mother, the lesser, and all of the stars bowing down while he is exalted is really what it's showing us here. And I love the word that they say, are you going to reign over us as if a king? Well, guess what? You're going to find out later in the story what really happens here. All right, verse 12. His brothers had gone to the pasture to pasture their father's flock in Shechem. Israel said to Joseph, your brothers, are pasturing their flocks in Shechem. Get ready, I am sending to you to them. I am ready, Joseph replied. Then Israel said to him, go and see how your brothers and their flocks are doing, and then bring word back to me. So he sent him from Hebron, the valley, and they went to Shechem. A man found him there, wandering in the field, and asked him, what are you looking for? So we can see here, Joseph, he's a good kid. He's going to do whatever his dad says, but he doesn't realize the trap he's getting ready to walk into. I mean, it kind of like, and I've seen this with kids where their whole world is that one parent. They're going to blindly walk into whatever it is. And here he is, once again, he's the family snitch. Tell me what's happening here and bring word back to me. So as soon as the brothers see the snitch coming over the hill, and now the snitch is going to reign over us as well. Their jealousy, it turned into something else. Their jealousy truly turned into hatred. And these are full-grown men. I think Joseph is the baby. He's 17. A lot of these guys, they already have kids. You think about Reuben, the oldest. At this point, he's probably mid-50s, 60 at this point. I mean, he's a full-grown man. Judah, in the next passage, you're going to see he's a full-grown man too. These guys, you can't take them lightly. And that hatred, what happens with hatred when it's unchecked? Didn't we learn that with Esau? What did Esau want to do after his blessing was stolen and his birthright? The only thing that brought him forward and gave him substance in his life is the thought of killing his brother. Now here we're seeing the same thing repeat, but just on a bigger scale. And here's the irony. They believed that killing Joseph would destroy the dream. That's what they truly thought. Instead, their actions would eventually help move Joseph towards its fulfillment. And you can see God's sovereign hand working through this. Because remember, God knows the past, present, and the future all at the same time. What people intend for destruction, God can always use for his sovereign purposes. All right. And then when you get into the future, when all of this transpires, Genesis chapter 50, verse 20, it says, you meant for evil against me, but God meant it for good. And I think that's really the catch verse there. You know what you thought you were going to do. Didn't happen. All right, going on to verse 16. The plot thickens. I am looking for my brothers, Joseph said. Can you tell me where they pasture their flocks? They have moved out from here, the man said. I heard them say, let's go to Dothan. So Joseph sent out after his brothers and found them at Dothan. Verse 18. Then they saw him in the distance, and before they had reached him, they plotted to kill him. That's what these guys were truly like. Not a good thing. It's going to get worse. Now, and that's the thing when we think about all this. Joseph, he could have caught all this, could have stopped all this, but his favoritism led right into it. And you would think he would learn what favoritism did between him and his brother, because remember that favoritism. He was mom's favorite. Esau was dad's favorite. He saw how that completely messed up the family and made everything go south. And here he is doing it again himself. You'd think that they would learn, but they don't. As we go into verse 19, that jealousy, it goes even worse now. It gets even bad. You think it would start to get a little bit better? It doesn't. Verse 19. They said to one another, "Oh, look, here comes the dream expert." You like that? You like that title they put in there? Here comes the dreamer, the dream expert. It has this little head up in the clouds, and we're all going to submit to. Verse 20. So now, come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of these other pits. We could say that a vicious animal ate him. Then we'll see what becomes of this little dreamer. When Reuben heard this, remember that's the oldest, he's the one in charge. When Reuben heard this, he tried to save him from them. He said, "Let's not take his life." Reuben also said to them, "Don't shed blood. Throw him down in this pit into the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him, intending to rescue him from them and return him to his father." So he had a plan. He was going to try to circumvent his brother's hatred. Let's just throw him into the pit. When they all move on, I'll come back, I'll pull him up, send him back to dad, and I know my baby brother's not going to die. But did that happen? No. Did that happen? Did it really go that way? Now, and let's see here. Going on to verse 23. When Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped off Joseph's robe, the robe of many colors that he had on. Then they took him and threw him into the pit, the empty pit, without any water. You see, this got from bad to worse now at this point. And what do you think Joseph is thinking when all of this is happening? What did I do wrong? I'm just doing what my dad told me to do. He told me, and sometimes he wasn't coming out there just to be the snitch. Okay? It was, I think, of David. And when David, his brothers were off for war, Jesse wanted to know what was going on. He used David as the little snitch too, but he would send him with some loaves of bread and some cheese and things for mom to go ahead and give to the big brothers. That's what Joseph was doing here too. He was giving them supplies. He was there, but then when he was done, he'd go back home and tell them really what was going on. All right. Imagine that. Being in the pit of despair. Being at the bottom of the cistern. No way out. You couldn't climb. You're done. You were just going to sit there and die of dehydration and be stuck in the pit. And have you ever felt like that? What happened to you in your life? You ever been in that dark spot where you are in the pit of despair? You thought life was going the direction you wanted to go, and then all of the wheels come off the wagon. And you can't get out of it. You can't manipulate your way out of it. You can't climb out of it. You can't do anything to get yourself out of the pit. I see this happen a lot with addiction, alcoholism, pride. People will not accept God unless there is no option but destruction or to accept God. People don't like change, do they? They don't like change at all. You know what actually makes people change most of the time? When it's too painful not to change. When they really don't have a choice. Think about somebody that has done drugs for a very long time. And you know what? They overdose and they end up in that hospital bed. And the doctor looks at them very squarely and says, you either need to change what you're doing or you're going to die. Right? Or somebody, you pick them up off the floor at the bottom of the trailer with the whiskey bottle in their hand once again. Same thing. You either need to stop doing this or you don't have any other options. That's about the only time some people will actually accept God in their life. They have to have the climax of the critical moment when when there's no other choice. Chapter 37, verse 25. This will show you the callousness of the brothers. Remember, they just threw him in the pit, stripped his clothes off. Little kid's down there naked, 17 years old. And let's know what happens next. So they sat down and ate a meal. They're fine with it. None of them feel guilty. Would you be able to eat if you just chucked your little brother into a pit? What does that say about these 11, about these brothers? What does it say about their character, their morality? There's definitely no love in their hearts. That is their own flesh and blood. They just chucked into the bottom of that hole. And what are they doing? Let's go ahead and have lunch. So they sat down to eat a meal, and when they looked up, there was a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were carrying aromatic gum and balsam and resin going down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What do we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come on, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay hand on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers agreed. That sounds like a great idea. Instead of killing him, let's just sell him, and at least we get a profit from it. When the Midianites and the traders passed by, his brothers pulled Joseph out of the pit and sold him for 20 pieces of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took Joseph to Egypt. You know, that was the basic price for a slave. That is how much value their brother had to them. And what are they thinking at this point? The snitch is gone. Did they care about their dad in that situation? How much grief and torment they were going to put him through? Their mother? No, none of it. They didn't care about any of it. They didn't care about how the dynamics were going to change in their family. For them, problem solved. And this is them selling their brother off, weighing out the silver, and they're doing it with eager hands. They don't care at all. All right, verse 29. When Reuben returned to the pit, he saw that Joseph was not there. He tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone. What am I going to do?" So they took Joseph's robe, slaughtered a male goat, and dipped the robe in blood. They sent the long sleeve robe to their father and said, "We found this. Examine it. Is it your son's robe or not?" That's pretty callous, isn't it? I really don't think they care about their dad's feelings either. His father recognized it. "It is my son's robe," he said. "A vicious animal has devoured him. Joseph has been torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth around his waist, and mourned for his son many days. All of his sons and daughters tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "No," he said, "I will not go down to Shiloh." And he says, "No, I will go down to Shiloh to my son, mourning." And his father wept for him. They didn't care about their dad at all, did they? God, that's pretty cold when we're looking at this. Very cold. And here's the reality. Sin has consequences. Do you think all of what they just did is they're going to get off scot-free? No. When you do sinful things like this, especially to your own family, there's no get out of jail free card here. You know, how could they go home to their wives and their own children and act like everything's normal after they just did this to one of their own brothers? I don't see that happening, do you? You know, the seeds that were planted earlier, that hatred, this is what it finally bloomed into. And what did it start with? He's a snitch, I don't like him. And then what did it go to? And then he had two dreams, he's going to reign over this. And then, he's the favored one. I've heard kids say that before. He's the favored one. He's the blessed one. You can't have favoritism within the family. It does nothing but cause chaos. Meanwhile, as we close this passage, meanwhile the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, the officer of Pharaoh and the captain of the guard. So, what they thought was going to be a good thing, they got him out of the picture. What they don't realize is they just planted him exactly where he needed to be in order to fulfill God's plan to actually not only save their family, but to save all of Egypt. You know, and that's the thing that we don't realize sometimes. Even when we think we're in a bad spot, this might be exactly where God has intended us to be, even though we don't understand. You're thinking, I'm just in misery here. How can this be what God's will is for me? Like I said before when we started this, sometimes God has to train you and build your character first, or put you in the right place at the right time so that God can use you as the right tool. All right, so let me wrap this up. 3 easy points here. Number 1, trust God when you cannot understand God's plan. That's called blind faith. You wonder what's going on? You wonder why all these crazy things are happening? Don't get overwhelmed with everything else. Just keep your eyes focused on God and trust His plan. Number 2, refuse to let betrayal produce bitterness. You know, when somebody works you over, what is the natural thing that we feel like we want? Revenge, justification. We want that to be paid double back for them. 7 times if you're a real critic, right? You know, I had a guy that I worked with once, an owner, where, you know, if one of their lawyers, he had 5 lawyers on staff, and if they lost a case, he would actually sue his own lawyers. Oh yeah, talking about a whole different level of depravity there. And I said, what's the point? What are you wanting them to feel? He's like, I wanted them to know that my foot was on their neck. That's what these people are like that I had to work with at one time. All right, number 3. Remember that the pit is not the end of God's purpose. It's temporary. And what a lot of people do is they take a temporary time that you're going through of suffering and they turn it into something that's permanent. That's not what we're called to do either. Character building and discipline are never fun at the time when we're getting them, are they? You ever told your kids you're going to spank them? This hurts me more than it's going to hurt you? And they're like, yeah, right. I don't enjoy disciplining my children. God doesn't enjoy disciplining us, or training us, or shaping us, pruning and molding us in what He wants us to be. So that's the whole thing, is when you're going through this, and you can't understand why, don't let that seed of bitterness take root in your heart. Keep your eyes focused upon Jesus, on what He is doing for you. And remember, He's got you in there at the right place, at the right time. All right, I'll leave that up on the screen later so that people can take a picture of it, okay? Heavenly Father, Lord God, as we go before you, Lord, help us to take this message to heart. Help us when we are in that pit of despair, Heavenly Lord, to keep our eyes ever focused upon you above all else. Keep our faith strong, Heavenly Lord, and know that your providence and your will in our lives are paramount above whatever sufferings we might be going through at the time. In the name of Jesus,